3. Good evening and welcome to this edition of Dear Old State Update, brought to you by Penn State Sports Night. My name is Jack Dannons alongside Brian Portney, here to bring you the latest across the Penn State sports world.
First, let's head over to Beulah Ice Arena, a place that plays host to one of the hottest teams in college hockey right now. Hopes were not high for men's hockey, but a recent hot streak has the future looking bright for Penn State. Let's head over to the monitor to hear from Cassie and Anthony.
Thanks, guys. Men's hockey has been making moves recently as they are now ranked 18th in the USCHO polls. The Nittany Lions have a record of 14-11 and 3 with only a few more series left in the push for postseason play. I'm Cassie Vaselis, joined line Anthony Descher, and we are your Penn State men's hockey beat reporters. So, Anthony, if we look at this past series, they just swept Wisconsin. So what were some of your takeaways from that series and the team overall right now?
Yeah, well, I mean, they had us in the first half, not going to lie. I mean, what a complete 180 this team has really faced from the first start of the year to what we've seen now, especially in the series against Wisconsin, going on the road, hostile environment in Madison. You know, Wisconsin, they swept you back when they played in Pagula. Now you go into their turf and get the brooms out and sweep them. We hear the team after game one saying, RC's on fire, your offense is terrified. And that's exactly how RC played, on fire. Nearly a 970 save percentage, 1 shutout, 2 wins. This team is rolling right now. And Reese Laubach, he comes into these Wisconsin series with a chip on his shoulder. And you saw exactly that, a handful of goals. Aiden Fink continues to climb that scoring race title. Charlie Serrato continuing his great freshman campaign. The Nittany Lions are playing great hockey right now, and they're going to need to continue to do this down the stretch.
Yeah, not only was this series huge for the Nittany Lions to rebound after their start of the season, but so have been the rest of the series. And also, you said Sergeyev, he just broke Penn State's single-season shutout record. He got his 4th shutout in that first game of the Wisconsin series. So huge kudos to him. And then we have Fink, again, he's at 41 points right now. So it'll be exciting to see how many points he can rack up in the rest of the regular season. The team is also 13-0 when they start fast and they get on the board first. So that's huge for this team, and that's been a huge contributor to how they're looking right now. But when we look ahead to Notre Dame, they come to Hockey Valley this weekend. So what does the team need to do to capitalize on them, and how big would these wins be for this team?
I mean, it's very important to continue the good vibes this team has right now. You look at Notre Dame at the bottom of the standings, just not playing their best hockey this year. You saw the team before in Chicago, frozen confines. You got your first Big Ten win against them. It's very important to strike while this iron is hot, as you know, Penn State's playing really good and Notre Dame a little more inconsistent. I mean, this is where you really need to buckle down and get those Big Ten wins. You need to sweep Notre Dame. That should be the goal, because the pairwise, we'll talk about it later, requires you to win, and the Big Ten standings as well. You see how close Wisconsin and Penn State are now, just 4 points separated. You get 3 points for a win. You could possibly get 6, and depending on how Wisconsin does, you can jump them. And maybe, I mean, let's go week by week here, but got to focus on one game at a time, of course. Michigan could also maybe be jumped as well, but Penn State got to take care of Notre Dame. Possibly, we might think about this in March, a home game at Pagula Ice Arena for the Big Ten tournament.
Yeah, that'd be crazy. This is a huge start of momentum for them if they can get this sweep against Notre Dame, especially in front of their home crowds. They love playing in front of the Roar Zone. They help them out all the time. So that's huge. And Notre Dame's also coming off of 2 losses against Ohio State. So this is perfect time for them to capitalize. But with talking about how the team is playing so well right now, what does the playoff outlook look like right now?
Well, Big Ten standings are important. Penn State is now 18 in the USHO poll with that sweep against Wisconsin. But at this point of the year, you're looking at the pairwise. You got these top 16 teams, Penn State right here at 16, kind of right on the bubble there. You're going to see maybe 12, maybe 13 get in, depending on these other conferences, how the auto bids pan out. But Penn State is considered the host for the Allentown region, and if they can continue to climb, if they can get into maybe the 13, 14, maybe even 12 region, the people who make these decisions to set up regions and pick the teams who make it to the NCAA tournament may consider Penn State just because, hey, they're the hosts, they've been playing good hockey, and we want to see that more from the Nittany Lions now in a playoff atmosphere.
Right. Well, time will tell what the rest of the season will look like for the Blue and White, with the Notre Dame series approaching, along with 2 Big Ten series. Now let's go to Amanda and Maya at the desk with men's basketball.
Thanks, Cassie. Now moving to the court where Penn State men's basketball continues to struggle. Here's a look at what happened against Minnesota.
Men's basketball returned to the BJC to host the first of 2 meetings with the Minnesota Gophers in the next 20 days. The Nittany Lions fell in another close game with a final score of 69-61 Minnesota. Penn State is battling a lack of healthy starters right now. Both Puff Johnson and now Yannick Conan-Niederhauser are out with injuries.
This league is unforgiving, and I've been where he's at, where you've got a good thing going, and then you get hit with an injury bug, and people don't want to hear it, but there's not a lot you can do.
With Niederhauser's injury being more recent, the team is still adjusting. Coach Rhodes said that he sprained his ankle on Sunday at practice.
His presence just alters the game. I think, he's a huge vertical threat. I don't think they had a big man like him in his style. So, we just missed his presence totally.
Even with the Nittany Lions' starting 5 struggles, DeMarco Dunn definitely proved himself today, leading the team with 18 points and 6 rebounds. He says the team's performance recently is a result of them beating themselves. Coach Rhodes also expressed his disappointment in the team's performance recently and said they have to turn it around to end this season.
We've been close. We've been frustrated, and you can see that. You can see it on everybody because these guys want to win, and they work hard. But just because of that doesn't guarantee you wins, and that's why we're hurting right now. I feel for the guys.
For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Maya Bealing.
Penn State has had a rough run recently, and since the new year has been hit with a hard injury bug. The Nittany Lions are currently without 2 of their key players, Puff Johnson and Yannick Conan-Niederhauser. Now, Amanda, Puff has been out for just about a month with his right arm injury. We saw him go from just some tape to a splint to what looks like a soft cast, and we're thinking it's going to be a hard cast situation now. And Yannick with his sprained ankle for just about a week. How have you seen these injuries and the absence of these 2 players affect the team?
Yeah, well, in their past 9 games, they've been without one of their double-digit shooters, and that has been drastically upset for them because they've lost 8 of those games. The last time they won was against Rutgers at home, and that feels like ages ago, considering the last time we were on the show, they lost to Ohio State in the return to rec game, and that was a brutal loss. They lost to Minnesota by 8 in a game that felt like it dragged forever with the amount of fouls that came down the stretch. And now they're currently out west, lost to UCLA, have another game upcoming against USC, which we'll talk about later. But it's taken away a ton of options. You have Puff Johnson, who transferred to the Nittany Lions last season and put up much better numbers in the time he had played now, but that progress has been halted with this injury. And then you have Yannick, who has been bright spot in the paint, getting a lot of passes from Ace in there and had a team high 21 against Ohio State, was the single bright spot in that game, and that gets taken away. So now those options have run out for guys like Ace, and now other guys have to be put into the lineup. You have Nick Kern, who's basically the 6th starter, who that's what they said in the beginning of the season, is now one of the starting 5. You have DeMarco Dunn having to make a bigger impact, and luckily he's come up big, but all of it's just not translating well enough to actually come out with a win and make that win column improve.
Yeah, and as you're bringing up, DeMarco Dunn has become a very valuable member of the starting 5. He has really proved himself in these recent games. But we have heard from him just last week after the Minnesota game. He was telling us how Yannick was really missed. His 7-foot presence on the court. Not many teams can compete with that. Not many teams have a 7-foot guy underneath the hoop like Yannick. So it is a talent to miss for Penn State. But with that being said, Ace Baldwin Jr., Penn State's star player has been continuing to do his job very well and very consistently, but his job has gotten just a little bit harder recently. How have you seen that play out for him in this last month?
Yeah, well, because you're taking out guys like Yannick and Puff, two key parts of Penn State offensively, defenses can focus on them. The Ohio State coach admitted, yeah, we schemed around him. We wanted to limit the amount of time he had on the ball. And when you have a guy who is one of the top 10 finalists for point guard of the year, the only Big Ten player represented and up for defensive player of the year, and one of the 10 finalists for national player of the year, that's who you want to stop. And when he can't dish in a pass to a guy like Yannick to get it home, you can take away these options that he has to shoot. He's not getting as many open three looks as he'd like. And his point totals have been struggling against Minnesota. It took him until the 3.5-minute remaining mark of that first half to even get on the board. And he's a guy who often leads the team in scoring. So that is huge for defenses to be able to recognize and kind of slow down his progressions. And I think even a little bit, you've seen him frustrated, and he also hasn't been fully healthy for quite some time. I think he missed the game against Oregon at the start of the new year once campus and we all returned back for the start of the spring semester, but has been playing 40 minutes often and doesn't really get taken out because he is a catalyst for this team. But right now he's kind of getting stopped a little bit, and Penn State just hasn't found a way to get around that.
And we have talked about this before. It really all just comes down to the team's chemistry. They are having to work around a couple of different obstacles right now, but they're going to have to iron that out if they want to look to pick up a Big Ten win tomorrow against USC, against the Trojans. This is only the third time these two teams have faced in program history. Penn State is 2-0 against them. What are you looking for in this matchup, and what are you expecting from Penn State?
Well, the road hasn't treated Penn State very nicely. They've only won once, and that came against Drexel, not counting any games that were played at neutral sites. But luckily for them, if they're looking at just kind of some streaks going on, and ignoring their own losing streak, USC has lost their past 2 games, but those have been road games. The Trojans do have a strong 10-5 home record, but their conference record is below 500. Penn State's obviously is too. We keep saying that these games should be close, but I feel like a lot of these teams pick up a ton of momentum going into halftime on Penn State and carry that through, and down the stretch has just been a huge issue, and they're unable to regain any momentum.
What's going to be key for this game specifically is their ability to close out the game. Penn State has struggled with this more recently, but throughout the season.
Yeah.
In 7 of their 11 losses, they have been within 4 points of the other team in the last 2 minutes of the game. So they're going to have to figure that out if they want to secure a win tomorrow.
Yep.
The Nittany Lions will play the Trojans tomorrow at USC and return home on Saturday for a game against Washington. Back at Pagula, women's ice hockey has clinched the AHA regular season title yet again. Josh Bartosik has the story.
Penn State did something the Kansas City Chiefs could only hope to achieve. Complete a three-peat. The Nittany Lions secured a 3rd straight AHA regular season title with a 4-3 win over Mercyhurst, securing home ice throughout postseason play. A solid defense and elite goaltending from Katie Disa has led the team to a 17-1 record in AHA play, the best mark in program history. Offensively, superstar Tessa Janicki continues to flourish, with 21 goals and 47 assists, bolstering one of the best top lines in the nation alongside Abby Stonehouse and Caitlin Roberts, with a combined 90 points on the year.
Just they come up big, obviously, like when we need it. They can change momentum of their game.
Even with the regular season title secured, Jeff Campersol's squad knows they have to be on their A game to make it back to the NCAA tournament, potentially running into Mercyhurst along the way.
They're a little loose, which is fine, but there's no, like, Mercyhurst is a 1-goal game pretty much every time we play them, so there's no, like, thinking that they're better than they are or they're going to walk over Mercyhurst. It was just a matter of, like, kind of being, like, stale all week and then into the first period, and then they needed to get, like, you know, smacked around a little bit to wake up.
For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Josh Bartosik.
The Penn State women's hockey team has officially clinched their 3rd straight AHA regular season title with a 4-3 overtime win over Mercyhurst on Friday night. Goals from Maddie Christian, Grace Outwater, Abby Stonehouse, and Lindy Lobdell led the Nittany Lions to the win. They clinched the title with an outstanding effort and top-line pressure from their top line, and I'm Jeremy Rose, joined alongside Josh Bartosik to talk us through that top line. So take us away, Josh.
Yeah, I want to look at one specific play from this past weekend, and it starts with a Lindy Lobdell shot. Rebound goes into the corner. Normally the defense is able to get to that, but Tessa Janicki really hounds that puck, gets support down low from Caitlin Roberts, who rims it around the boards, uses her big body to muscle it off the puck, lays it off for Abby Stonehouse, and this play continues to develop for Penn State, where they're cycling and just hounding the puck, working their magic around Mercer's, tiring them out, leads to a chaos in front of the net, and Stonehouse is able to bat it down low into the back of the net to help Penn State get into that really sort of groove that they started out slow against in that first game. But going back to what Stonehouse has done, she's kind of Jeff Kempersall said he wants her to be a Brad Marchand kind of player, and a goal like that will really do that for a team. I mean, get down to the greasy areas, and you need that going into AHA tournament play in just a few weeks.
Yeah, I mean, between that top line excellence, you've got Tessa Janicki, you've got Caitlin Roberts, you've got Abby Stonehouse, who's come out. You've also got on that second and third line deeper on the team, you've got Grace Outwater, and you've got Maddie Christian, who's been a staple all season long. How are they going to come back? Of course, they lost on senior day. They lost that 3-2 game to this Mercier squad, their first conference loss of the year. How are they going to learn from this loss? Do you think it was a positive that they ended up falling to Mercyhurst? And how are they going to translate that into the AHA championship?
I do think it's positive, right? And I think it's because if you go into AHA play, and used to be the CHA, you go into AHA play undefeated in the tournament, you kind of think it's a cakewalk, but that's not going to be the case, right? This is Mercer's team, like we've talked about multiple times. They have Penn State's number. It's always close. I mean, you even heard Jeff Kempersall say it moments ago that it's always a one-goal game, or it's always close when you play Mercyhurst. And so Penn State's got to find a way to score in the power play. That was a huge problem this past weekend. They had multiple power play opportunities. We're not really able to get anything going. It almost was an easy free 2 minutes off the ice for the Lakers this past weekend. And there's a very high probability that they'll play them again come tournament time, and you have to be on your A game, especially on the power play, because we've talked about this a lot as well. If you don't win the AHA tournament, very slim chance you make it to the NCAA tournament. But the team with this much talent, like players like Tessa Janicki and the freshmen Outwater and Stonehouse, like we've talked about, if you don't make the NCAA tournament, you can pretty much kiss the entire season goodbye. It's basically a wash at that point.
Yeah, not even worth it at the end. Got to come out of the AHA. Not a strong conference. You have to come out on top if you want the opportunity to be in that NCAA tournament. They're probably going to see Mercyhurst later down the line, most likely in that championship game. It was a one-goal win last year. We'll see how it turns out this year. And the Nittany Lions will next travel into Rochester to face RIT in their final tune-up before the AHA Conference Championship. Now to Nika Rodriguez with wrestling at the BJC.
This past Friday, the number 1 ranked Penn State Nittany Lions welcomed number 12 ranked Michigan to the Bryce Jordan Center. One of the biggest storylines of the night was freshman Kyson Garcia getting his name called at 133. Normally, sophomore Braden Davis gets the starts, but has been dealing with an injury. Last Friday, Davis missed Iowa and Kurt McHenry filled in. This was Garcia's first match of the season. Garcia was able to beat Nolan Wirtanen by decision. Head coach Cale Sanderson shared his thoughts on Garcia's performance.
Yeah, I thought Garcia did a really good job. He hasn't wrestled since November, I don't think, and so that's a big match to be your first match, and the first time he's wrestled in a dual meet, I think. So he did a nice job. He went and scored his points.
Penn State held a 33-0 lead when the 197-pound match came around. Number 4 ranked Josh Barr was taking on number 2 ranked Jacob Cardenas. The match's first overtime period ended scoreless. Cardenas then took a 2-1 lead in the first tiebreaker. Barr then got the late win. On Friday night, the Penn State Nittany Lions dominated the Michigan Wolverines and swept them in every single weight class. Today, they returned to Rec Hall to face the Maryland Terrapins. Penn State has wrestled in 75 straight Rec Hall sellouts. It for sure felt that way this past Sunday. Number 1 ranked 157-pounder Tyler Kasak was wrestling Ethan Miller when he took a shot to the head and had to be evaluated for a concussion. Kasak was unable to continue, giving Miller the win. Last week versus Iowa, Kasak suffered a head injury that needed stitches and a head wrap. Even versus Michigan this past Friday, there was a stoppage in Kasak's match due to a hit to the bandaged area. Coach Sanderson spoke on the injuries.
Well, yeah, obviously you prefer no injuries, but that's just a part of life, sports. It happens. So
But yeah. I mean, we have best trainer in the world, and a lot of good people that are willing to help. And
Penn State will head to Columbus this Friday for a meet with the Buckeyes. They'll then head to Illinois on Sunday before returning to Rec Hall for one last match before the Big Ten Championship. For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Nico Rodriguez.
Penn State Wrestling is still undefeated in its 2024-2025 campaign, including a victory over Maryland and 2 big wins in the BJC duels. Speaking of the BJC duels, Nico, there is one guy who has continued to surprise me all season long. We talked about him last time we were on the show. It's Josh Barr at 197. The redshirt freshman, you'll see him right there up on the TV. He's number 4 in that 197 weight class. Had that BJC duel against Michigan against the number 2 wrestler in that class, Jacob Cardenas. That was a great match. They ended regulation tied. They went to the first tiebreaker period, and Cardenas held the edge 2-1. Then in the last 5 seconds of the second tiebreaker period, Barr hit him with a reversal and was able to pick up the win. He moves to 14-1 on the season, dropped in the Iowa BJC duel the week prior, but he's just been a workhorse. He's been an absolute dog this entire season, and he's someone who's really making a name for himself. When you think of Penn State wrestling, you're thinking of guys like Carter Starachi, who we're going to talk about in a little bit. You're thinking of guys like Greg Kirkfleet, but Josh Barr and the guy that you're going to talk about too, they're really cementing themselves in what it means to wrestle for this program.
Yeah, I'm going to talk about Mitchell Messenbrink. So far, he's 16-0, the number 1 ranked 165-pounder in the country, which that's where he stood for the last 16 weeks. He's only a sophomore, so he's doing all of this really early on. And up until this past Friday, he led the streak with 12 tech falls in the country, meaning nobody had lasted the whole match with him up until this past Friday. He's a really savvy wrestler, really smart wrestler. He used to play chess competitively, so that kind of works out hand in hand there. And he recently said that Penn State is the best place to train in the world, best trainers in the world, so that all players' ceilings are very high. So I'm really excited to see kind of how he finishes off the rest of the season. And now let's go back to another Penn State legend, Carter Starachi, that we were just talking about.
Yeah, you and I were talking before the show of, what we wanted to preview and talk about. And sometimes it's hard to find storylines, especially with this program, because they are so dominant. And when you think of dominant, you're thinking of guys like Carter Starachi. The numbers say it all, Nico. He's a 4-time NCAA champion, 4-time All-American, 2-time Big Ten champion. He's back in Happy Valley for his 5th season, seeking his 5th national championship. Now, Starachi, there's one thing he hasn't won, and it's the Hodge Trophy. That is the award that goes to the best collegiate wrestler. And Starachi was talking to the media saying he wants things that he can earn out on the mat. He wants the Big Ten championship. He wants the NCAA championship. And while the Hodge Trophy might be nice, he doesn't really need it. He's only lost 4 times his entire Penn State career, 2 of those coming from an injury that he had at the Big Ten championship last year. So some count it, some don't, but an amazing record. He's won over 60 straight. He's just been fantastic the entire time. And when you think about Penn State wrestlers and Penn State legacy, Carter Starachi, a name that comes to mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Just like, as you just said, Penn State legends, recently you think of Bo Nickel and even Roman Bravo Young. That's just how well Starachi's been wrestling.
Yes, definitely. You'll see Starachi and the crew when Penn State heads to Ohio State and Illinois this upcoming weekend, then close out the regular season against American next Friday. Now, let's take a look at a team who's been struggling as of late, the Lady Lions. Bronwyn Lieber was at the BJC for their most recent home loss to Washington.
Last Wednesday, the Lady Lions hosted the Washington Huskies on National Women in Sports Day. It also celebrated 60 years for Penn State women's sports, in which they celebrated with T-shirts and their fans.
60 years of women's in sports is phenomenal, and the fact that Penn State, before Title IX was a thing, really bought in to female athletics and what it could be. It's amazing.
Tip-off then got the action rolling as Washington had a heated first quarter, leading 26-15 after the first 10 minutes. Despite this slow start for the blue and white, Lady Lion Talea Walker found her spark, going on to contribute 17 points off the bench.
I try to be that spark off the bench, and my strength is going to the basket, so if there's an open lane, I'm encouraged to take it from my teammates, from my coaches. It doesn't matter who scores.
Despite the bench's best efforts, Penn State couldn't stop the Huskies, who achieved an astonishing 48% completion rate from beyond the arc and held Penn State to only an 11% completion. Washington managed the 82-71 road victory and was led by Hannah Steins, who posted a career high of 28 points. For Penn State Sports Night, I'm Bronwyn Leiber.
I'm now joined alongside our women's basketball beat reporter, Bronwyn Leiber. Bronwyn, after the loss to Washington, the Lady Lions faced Northwestern on the road. How has the past week gone for Penn State?
Yeah, it certainly hasn't been the prettiest of games, and even the prettiest of seasons, to be quite frank with you. The two teams have certainly been battling as they played, like you said, with Washington and Northwestern this past week.
Again, what can we see with the two games on the road at Northwestern?
Yeah, so we'll start with Washington. Last week, that was at home here in the Bryce Jordan Center. And frankly, to be quite honest with you, what lost it for them was their defense. Washington managed to complete 48% from beyond the arc on their threes, which is just phenomenal for any team. So great hand to them on their shooting percentages. But then when you can't guard that, you have got to be able to back it up on your offense. And they did not do that. The Lady Lions were only able to shoot 11% from the three-point line for their arc percentage, and that just did not match up. So even though they were quite even in some of the other quarters, going down early, 26-15 in that first quarter really was a dent in their mark. And then they traveled to Northwestern, hoping to finally break that losing streak that they've been stumbling on, the bad conference record they've been struggling on. Northwestern wasn't exactly the best team in the league either, so it was going to be a pretty even matchup. And the Lady Lions started out great. They were very competitive, very strong in the matchup, and looked like they were going to finally break this little curse they've been battling. And then it just fell flat. Once again, defense, which we'll talk a little bit more about later, just went dull, went flat like a soda, and they were not able to bounce back. And at the same time, when you look at it statistically, both Washington and Northwestern scored over 60 points on the Lady Lions. And yes, go back a little bit. Lady Lions had a phenomenal start to the season, 8-0. The Lady Lions are winless, straight up winless since then when allowing a team to score over 60 points. And that's what both Washington and Northwestern did.
Again, like you said, the struggles with defense-wise. What else? What other struggles do they have? Injuries, fouling the ball.
Yeah, exactly. Injuries is a big one right now. They can't really talk on it much for the coaching staff point of view. But Allie Campbell did show up on Wednesday to the Washington game in sweatpants and sat out, did not play. She also did not play against Northwestern. She has been a huge starter for the Lady Lions so far. So not having her was certainly detrimental. Kind of changes up your mix. On a positive note, they did have some bench players come with some big energy. The Washington game, for example, Tanea had 17 points, which Coach Carolyn Keeger commented on in media afterwards. She was thrilled with, very happy to see. I mean, any bench player that's putting up 17 points, you can't really complain. That's definitely hard work, tenacity, and straight energy. But going back to that Washington game specifically, they came to play. That flight from Washington must have just been so restful and peaceful, because here on the East Coast, they had so many historical statistical breaking points. They had a player who had a career high of 28 points. And in women's basketball, that's just insanity.
And what can we expect from our Lady Lions going forward?
Yeah, so the Lady Lions have a game coming up this week, really hoping to break that 5-game loss streak that they have been settling on right now. They will be playing Illinois, who is a little bit better in the Big Ten. And the Illinois and Northwestern actually played each other this past week, and Illinois won. Penn State is currently Northwestern's only conference victory. They both sit at one conference victory right now in the Big Ten. But Illinois has been pretty dominant recently, definitely on a hot streak, facing already multiple tough opponents, including ranked Maryland. So this will definitely be a challenge for the Lady Lions to take on, especially let alone on the road. So that is something they're going to have to battle. I know Coach Carolyn Keeger has talked a lot, whether they have Allie Campbell or not, they need to make sure that they are just bringing in the energy. They need to have a common goal, is something that she frequently says. And that is something they just probably haven't found yet, but something they're really looking towards.
Awesome. Well, these past 2 weeks have been a roller coaster for Penn State athletics with lots of action. Let's take a look at some of the top plays. Make sure you stay tuned in to Penn State Sports Night's YouTube channel, Instagram, X, and TikTok for updates on those games and everything we do here at Penn State Sports Night.
That's going to do it for tonight's Dear Old State update. For Jack Danitz and the rest of the Penn State Sports Night crew, I'm Brian Portney. Thank you for tuning in and have a great night.